All right, last day of notes. This is T.5, using trig to solve word problems. So let's get started. There is no new information here, or no new ways of doing it. It's just word problems instead of what you're used to. Our steps for solving word problems are going to be to draw a picture, label the given parts, and set up the trig ratios and solves. Now you're going to see exactly why I'm not an art teacher today, but you do want to make sure that you draw something. So if you want to get creative and draw the actual image, sweet. If not, just draw a right triangle and we're good to go. But make sure you label the parts. So whether you're using pictures or you're using words and saying boat, you want to make sure that you label it, and you want to make sure that you put in what you know, like angles and sides and any other information. But once you add that information, then our last step, step 3, is just to solve. So solve the problem that you're supposed to be solving. There are 2 pieces of vocabulary that we need to know, and that's angle of elevation and angle of depression. So if we have a horizontal line from our eyesight, we have 2 vocabulary words. So our angle of elevation is our angle from that point and going up. So think about elevating, going up. The other thing is the angle of depression, and that would be going down. So you're depressing something down, once again from eyesight, going down. We got a couple more examples over here. So we see our angle of depression, once again from the horizon or from the eyesight, going down. And then lastly, that last picture, angle of depression, angle of elevation. And there's something here that you should realize about angle of depression and angle of elevation. Can you figure it out? If you can't, its angle of depression is equal to the angle of elevation. Notice we have a pair of parallel lines. If these are both horizontal, we have a transversal that goes through them. So then these are alternate interior angles, so those would be congruent. Alright, so our first problem. Find the angle of elevation if you are standing 400 feet away and the building is 800 feet tall. So once again, the first thing I'm going to do is we want to draw a picture. We have it. We want to label our picture. We already have that. So now it's just about setting up the trig problem and solving it. So if that's the angle I care about, then we can label our triangle as our hypotenuse, our opposite, and our adjacent. The hypotenuse is completely blank. Doesn't help us out. That leaves us with the opposite and the adjacent, which leaves us with a tangent problem to solve. So I can set it up as the tangent of x is equal to the opposite over the adjacent, 400. So at this point it's important to think about, is this going to be a tangent problem or a tangent inverse problem? And since we are missing an angle, that means this is going to be an inverse problem. So we'll do tangent of x will equal 850 divided by 400. So to solve for x, we say x is approximately, and once again we have to take that tangent inverse of 850 divided by 400. So all we got to do is just plug this into our calculator, and when you get it, you're going to get x is approximately 64.7988, but with angles we want to round to the nearest angle, so we will say that it's approximately 65 degrees. Question number 2. So question number 2 is a little bit tougher, so feel free to try that one on your own, but I also am going to go over this one when I see you guys next. So feel free to try it, but we'll make sure we go over it later. Question number 3, you're in a hot air balloon that is 600 feet above the ground where you can see your friend. If the angle from your line of sight to your friend is 20 degrees, that's also called the angle of depression. How far is he from the 600-foot point on the ground below the hot air? Now this angle right here is not part of a triangle, so it's actually not going to help us solve the problem, but remember the fact that we learned a couple slides ago in that the angle of depression is congruent or is the same as the angle of elevation. So we can take a look at this problem and we know that this angle is also 20 degrees. Now that is part of the triangle and that can help us out to solve this. So go ahead and set up the problem. Is this going to be a sine, cosine, tangent problem? And then also let me know if it's going to be an inverse or a normal trig function. This is a normal tangent problem. So our question here is how far is he from the 600-foot point on the ground below the hot air. So this A is what we're trying to find, the length of this side right here. So because of that, our H is completely useless, doesn't help us out at all. We know that our opposite is 600 feet, so we'll use the O and the A, which is tangent. And because we're missing the sign, we use normal tangent. If we're missing the angle, then we would use inverse tangent, but we know the angle is 20 degrees, so we don't need to worry about that. So then I can put this over 1, and I can cross multiply it. The tangent of 20 is 0.36, so I can rewrite the tangent of 20 degrees as 0.36 over 1 equals 600 over A, and now I can cross multiply this and solve. So I'm going to get 0.36A is equal to 600, and then dividing by 0.36 on both sides gives us an answer of A is approximately 1,666.67. We'll round to 2 decimals. And because this is a word problem, let's label it. My label here is feet, so feet is what I'm looking for. You should hopefully be getting the problem and kind of how this works. So try a couple of these on your own. Number 4 has a picture, so I'm going to skip that one, but let's look at number 5 then. So a tree casts a shadow 21 meters long. The angle of elevation of the sun is 51 degrees. What is the height of the tree? So this time you have to actually create the triangle and solve. So we want to make sure we draw our picture, label everything we can, plug in the information, and then use tree to solve that. So let's start. If we have a tree, we need to draw the tree. We also need a sun because we have a shadow, and then we definitely need the shadow. Then let's just create some of those sun rays just a little bit longer, and we'll make one that completes our triangle. And just for good measure, let's put the right angle symbol here because trees do grow 90-degree angles. Now since we have the picture, let's put in the information. So a tree casts a shadow 21 meters long. So that means my shadow is going to be 21 meters long. And the angle of elevation of the sun is 51 degrees. So angle of elevation, remember, is from a horizontal place and then goes up. So this is going to be 51 degrees. And we want to know what is the height of the tree. So we're trying to find out what that height of the tree is going to be. So think about what trig function this one's going to be. Once again, let me know if it's going to be sine, cosine, tangent, and then if it's going to be inverse or just the normal trig function. This will be tangent of 51 degrees. Once again, we have our opposite right here, we have our adjacent right here, and the hypotenuse tells us nothing. So opposite and adjacent means this is going to be a tan problem. And because we are not missing an angle, we are instead missing a side. That tells us normal tangent, not the inverse of tangent. And then think, will it be 21 over x or x over 21? It will be x over 21, since x is the opposite and 21 is the adjacent. We put that over 1, and then we need to figure out what is the tangent of 51 degrees. We get an answer of 1.23. So 1.23 over 1 equals x over 21. We can cross multiply. We're going to get x is equal to 25.83. And we'll use our approximately wavy lines since we did round our tangent function. And then we look at our label. We have 21 meters long. So we'll say our tree is 25.83 meters. All right, so you definitely have the idea by now on how to solve these. Once again, the solving of the trig isn't any different than what we've done earlier this week. So your task is to actually be able to draw that picture, to interpret the word problem so that you can set it up and that you can actually solve the trig function. So give the rest of these problems a try. Once you start feeling comfortable with them, take a look at that T.5 LT check as well.